Hello everyone, this is Chris, Cars with Chris or Dentless Touch, wherever I decide to post this video on YouTube. The point of this video is to demonstrate some of the dynamic range of the two cameras. What are the two cameras? They're going to be the Canon EOS R5 and the Fuji XT4. Before I go into detail of the equipment, I want to share with you how I use these cameras. Now, we primarily use them for our YouTube channel, Dentless Touch, where we do run and gun quick, or not really quick, but tutorial videos of dent repair. We use this light, which is directly behind me, to actually see the dent. I position the camera so that you can see what I see. And so there's a lot of cinematic B-roll, but also some informative content in that whole video. I tend to record for roughly around 3 to 4 hours off and on. Most videos are around 20 minutes, between 10 and 20 minutes. Now, a little information about the lights that we use, because I feel like it's valuable for you guys to know. The lights are LED, so I gotta watch my shutter speed. Certain cameras are sensitive to the, and not with the flickering effect. And I've noticed just right now as I did the setup that the Fuji can run 60 frames a second with no flicker on this light, but the Canon has a flicker once I get above the shutter speed that needs to fit for 60 frames a second. I think it's over about 1/100th of a second. I think that's how they break it down. I don't know what causes that, so if you do, please leave a comment below. I just can tell in the LCD that there's some flickering happening in the Canon and not so much in the Fuji. So let's briefly talk about the equipment I'm going to use. Basically, the EOS R5 will have the RF 24 to 70 2.8. And then the comparable lens for the Fuji XT4 will be the 16 to 55 2.8. Even though the focal lengths do not seem like they do not add up on paper, it actually is the same focal length in reality. That's how Fuji just does it. And what I'm recording on now is the Canon EOS R shot in 4K 30 as with a 16 to 35 f4 lens. I'm going to switch this out and end the video with the Fuji, just so we can give a dynamic range. Now, this is not a scientific dynamic range test. This is just real world experience, or real world testing, I should say. How I use the cameras and what I need the cameras to do for me. Hopefully it's the last test. Again, guys, do not pay attention to color. I think that is so subjective, but let's just see if it works. Let's see if other things work. Autofocus, dynamic range, just make it usable. You know, if I gotta keep messing with the camera, I mean, look at this. In the Fuji, I can see myself. In the Canon, I can't. It just seems like it's too dark. And if that's gonna dictate, you know, how and when I use the camera, then it just does, it's not a versatile tool for me. And so it would just stay on the shelf. This is why iPhone is winning in some regard. So backlit like crazy. And again, Fuji's new software is supposed to give me better backlit autofocus. Well, autofocus in general, and you don't get those like step down, those kind of steps of it exposing, the exposure kind of changing. You don't get those steps. So do not kind of comment on that or think that that's a negative issue. Now, both of them are focusing on my eye, which is surprising, but I don't see myself. I got a glare on the Canon, so I don't know, but I do see a little bit of me on the Fuji. Now, I don't know what that is. That to me is dynamic range, but I could be wrong. I don't know what it's called. If there's a setting that I'm missing in the Canon, let me know. But this is the first thing that I noticed switching from the EOS R to the Fuji, that it kind of mimics like an iPhone GoPro with the DSLR quality and, you know, the image quality. Autofocus needs help, but I think I'm gonna upgrade to the software and kind of make a decision based on you guys' comments. So I really need you guys to comment and let me know if I'm doing something wrong with this Canon. I really want the Canon to win, because on the photography side, it's just a better camera. The autofocus, I mean, for a novice or an amateur, I would definitely want the Canon. But as far as image quality, I mean, outside of like the 8K, the 4K HQ, my stuff is getting processed on YouTube. You're not even you're not gonna take advantage of that. You guys might not even see the detail in the last test. I think sharpness is kind of like where you are going to deliver this footage to. Who are you going to deliver this footage to? If your work requires 8K footage, then obviously the Fuji's not going to win. Or the best 4K that you possibly can provide, yeah, I mean, Fuji's going to be good, but it may not be the top choice. So I do get better battery life out of the Fuji, I will say that. Alright, both of them are dark. Look at that. Whoa, my hands are getting tired. Alright, let's end this test. Alright, so that is it with the test. In the LCD, it looks like the Fuji is winning. And as far as the dynamic range, I'm calling it dynamic range because maybe the terminology I don't quite know. But leave a comment below if I'm wording it differently. But I do see more variance in the light. The gradient of the light is deeper. It has more latitude, if that makes sense. So I think that is called dynamic range. The Canon is dark, high contrast. Now the C-Log settings I was using was the natural, and I took down the saturation a little bit to give it a fighting chance. Now this is just coming from the LCD panel. I may put it in post and interrupt this video and say, yeah, the Canon does look similar to the Fuji. Now what I noticed in some of the, and I'm gonna confuse you guys, but I noticed in some of the A7S3 videos, that some of these preview videos that a lot of YouTubers are sharing with everybody, is that it does what the Fuji does when it comes down to having the background exposed, whether that be a sky, exposed somewhat properly, but yet you can still see yourself, even though you're in a low lit. It's the variance of exposure is completely on one side to the other, but yet the picture looks similar to the naked eye. It's a weird thing. I don't know if I'm setting the Canon up wrong for doing it, but I still see this exact same image that I see inside the A7S3 with the Fuji. When you're backlit like crazy, you still have decent exposure on your face. I don't know what that's called. I don't know why it's better in the Fuji and it seems to be better in the Sony, at least the A7S3, but the Canon lacks it. I don't really understand. So if you guys can clarify that, share this information, share this video. I don't know if this is something that you even care for, but this is just what I noticed in the variants of cameras that I have. This is just what I noticed in the various cameras that I've owned in the past and feel like are comfortable to use. I'm gonna pull out my iPhone if I need a high kind of HDR, high dynamic range is what I'm calling it, kind of photo or video. And I don't want to do that. The only camera where I didn't really need to pull out my phone for that level of latitude with the exposure was the Fuji. And I'm now seeing it in the Sony. So what's going on with the Canon? I don't know. Very good camera. I love the autofocus. Pictures are phenomenal. I want to switch to that platform from the Fuji, but right now, three Fuji bodies for the price of this Canon. And I don't really understand why Canon hasn't really nailed that. Now, I've changed the metering on that camera to spot on, to area. I've changed the metering a bunch of times. It does not change that effect. And I don't know what it is. Now, there's an HDR effect to the Canon, and I'm gonna test that, and if that works, I'll leave something at the end of this video. Hey, hopefully this video has been somewhat informative. I know I've just spent an hour testing this out. It's kind of like the real world test for me, not scientific. There's guys that do that and get all into the technical aspects of the camera. I haven't had any overheating issues with the R5, so that's not a problem for me. I just want to know what's going on with this dynamic range. That's all I have. That's the question I have. So hopefully you guys have a blessed one, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace.